Jeremy Morris, a 28-year-old human ambassador, grasps the hand of Stella, a high-ranking pack-led official, and pulls her close. As they begin to sway to the soft music at the bustling interstellar diplomatic gala, he notices her skin flush and her breathing quicken. Confusion flashes across his face as he realizes his slow dancing movements are causing intense arousal in Stella and other nearby pack-led females. The grand ballroom of the pack-led capital buzzes with activity. Delegates from Earth and the technologically advanced pack-led civilization mingle, their voices a low hum beneath the gentle melody. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the gathering, illuminating the ornate alien architecture that blends seamlessly with Earth-inspired decor. Jeremy guides Stella across the dance floor, acutely aware of her trembling body pressed against his. He catches sight of other pack-led females, their eyes dilated and fixed on him, bodies quivering with barely contained excitement. The male pack-leds, engrossed in their discussions, remain oblivious to the unfolding situation. Panic rises in Jeremy's chest as he realizes the potential diplomatic incident brewing. He attempts to discreetly end the dance, but Stella's grip tightens, her arousal intensifying with each step. Her fingers dig into his shoulders, her breath hot against his neck. Across the room, Senior Ambassador Marcus Blackwood notices the commotion. His eyes narrow as he takes in the scene, quickly assessing the delicate situation. He motions to other members of the human delegation, preparing to intervene. Jeremy struggles to extricate himself from Stella's embrace without causing offense. His mind races, searching for a way to defuse the situation without jeopardizing the crucial trade agreement hanging in the balance. The future of Earth-pack-led relations teeters on the edge of his next move. Suddenly, the pack-led males become aware of the charged atmosphere. Confusion and anger ripple through their ranks. Security forces move in, forming a tight circle around Jeremy and Stella. The gala descends into chaos as accusations of impropriety fly across the room. Jeremy finds himself at the center of a potential interstellar incident, caught between his diplomatic duty and the unexpected consequences of his actions. He realizes that his inadvertent discovery could be either a powerful tool for humanity or the spark that ignites an intergalactic conflict. As tensions escalate, the possibility of either a strengthened alliance or a devastating war looms on the horizon. Jeremy's heart pounds in his chest, the weight of Earth's future pressing down on him. He takes a deep breath, knowing that his next actions will determine the course of human history in the vastness of space. As chaos erupted in the ballroom, Jeremy felt a strong hand grasp his shoulder. He turned to see Senior Ambassador Marcus Blackwood, his face a mask of stern purpose. "Morris, we're leaving! Now!" Blackwood commanded, his voice cutting through the din of angry shouts and accusations. Jeremy nodded, relief washing over him as he was extracted from Stella's trembling embrace. The human delegation moved swiftly, forming a protective circle around Jeremy as they made their way to the exit. Pack-led security forces watched them warily, their postures tense and ready for conflict. As they reached the grand doors of the ballroom, Jeremy glanced back. He caught a glimpse of Stella being led away by a group of male pack-leds, her eyes still locked on him with an intensity that made him shudder. The journey to their quarters in the pack-led embassy was a blur of hushed whispers and hurried footsteps. Once inside, Blackwood turned to Jeremy, his expression grave. "You're confined to these quarters until further notice, Morris. We need to contain this situation before it spirals out of control." Jeremy sank into a chair, his head spinning. "Ambassador, I had no idea." Blackwood held up a hand, silencing him. "We'll get to the bottom of this. For now, stay put, and don't communicate with anyone outside this room." As the days passed, Jeremy paced his quarters like a caged animal. Through snippets of conversation and fleeting glimpses of news feeds, he pieced together the fallout from the gala. The pack-led government was in an uproar, demanding explanations for what they termed his provocative behavior. Earth's diplomatic corps scrambled to make sense of the incident, their carefully laid plans for a trade agreement now hanging by a thread. On the fourth day of his confinement, Jeremy's door slid open to reveal a petite woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She carried a large case of equipment, which she set down with a thud. Mr. Morris, I'm Dr. Eliza Chen, xenobiologist. I've been called in to study this phenomenon you've uncovered. Over the next week, Dr. Chen conducted a series of experiments using Jeremy as her primary subject. She brought in volunteer pack-led females, carefully monitoring their responses to various human movements. Jeremy found himself dancing, walking, and even simply standing still while connected to a dizzying array of sensors and scanners. As Dr. Chen worked, Jeremy caught glimpses of the bigger picture. He overheard heated debates between Ambassador Blackwood and other senior officials, arguments about diplomatic strategies and the potential for exploitation. Finally, Dr. Chen called a meeting with the entire human delegation. Her findings sent shockwaves through the room. It appears that human pheromones, when combined with specific rhythmic motions, what we call dancing, trigger an intense mating response in pack-led females, she explained, her voice clinical, but her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. This is unprecedented in our encounters with alien species. The room erupted into a flurry of questions and exclamations. Jeremy sat in stunned silence, the weight of this revelation settling heavily on his shoulders. As the implications of Dr. Chen's findings rippled through both human and pack-led societies, a new plan began to take shape. Earth's government, seeing an opportunity to salvage the deteriorating diplomatic situation, proposed a cultural exchange program centered around dance. To Jeremy's surprise, the pack-led leadership cautiously agreed to a limited trial. He found himself thrust into the role of dance instructor, teaching a small group of pack-led officials the basics of human movement. As he demonstrated a simple box step to his alien students, Jeremy's eyes met Stella's across the room. She had insisted on joining the program, her gaze never leaving him as he moved. He felt a mixture of guilt and something else, an undeniable pull towards her that he couldn't quite explain. After the lesson, Ambassador Blackwood pulled Jeremy aside, his voice low and urgent. "Morris, we have a unique opportunity here. Our intelligence agencies have been after pack-led FTL technology for years. Your talent could be the key to accessing it." Jeremy's stomach churned. "You want me to seduce them for information?" Blackwood's eyes hardened. "I want you to do whatever is necessary for the good of Earth. Remember where your loyalties lie." As the cultural exchange program gained traction, Jeremy found himself caught in a web of conflicting emotions and duties. He continued his dance lessons, watching as pack-led females responded with increasing fervor to human movements. During one session, as Jeremy guided Stella through a slow waltz, she leaned in close, her breath hot against his ear. "I've never felt anything like this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Our propulsion research, it's nothing compared to what you make me feel." Jeremy's heart raced, torn between his mission and the genuine connection he felt forming with Stella. As they swayed to the music, he realized he was dancing on the edge of a knife, with the future of interstellar relations hanging in the balance. As Jeremy swayed with Stella, her whispered words ignited a storm of conflicting emotions within him. The intimacy of their dance, combined with the tantalizing hint of classified information, pushed him to a decision. He would prioritize his mission, even as his heart protested. "Stella," he murmured, his voice low and urgent, "I'd love to see more of your work. Is there any way—" Her eyes lit up, a mixture of excitement and mischief dancing in their depths. "Meet me outside your quarters at midnight," she breathed, her fingers tightening on his shoulder. As the dance lesson concluded, Jeremy caught Ambassador Blackwood's approving nod from across the room. The weight of his duty settled heavily upon him as he prepared for the night ahead. When the embassy fell quiet, Jeremy slipped out of his quarters. Stella was waiting, her lithe form cloaked in shadows. Without a word, she took his hand, leading him through a series of back alleys and hidden passages. The pack-led research facility loomed before them, a behemoth of gleaming metal and pulsing lights. Stella's high-level clearance granted them swift entry, bypassing layers of security with ease. Inside, Jeremy's breath caught in his throat. The cavernous space hummed with energy, filled with technology beyond his wildest imagination. Intricate machinery stretched as far as the eye could see, pulsing with an otherworldly glow. "This is our latest FTL drive system," Stella explained, her voice brimming with pride as she gestured to a massive, spiral-shaped construct. It's capable of bending space-time in ways your scientists have only dreamed of. Jeremy leaned in, feigning intense interest while his hand discreetly activated the hidden recording device Blackwood had provided. As Stella delved into the technical specifics, the device captured every word, every detail of the revolutionary propulsion system. Their clandestine tour continued, with Jeremy's amazement growing genuinely alongside his guilt. The sheer magnitude of pack-led technological advancement was staggering. Suddenly, a shrill alarm shattered the air. Red lights flashed, bathing the facility in an ominous glow. Stella's eyes widened in panic. "They've detected unauthorized human presence," she gasped, grabbing Jeremy's arm. "We need to leave. Now." They raced through the labyrinthine corridors, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind them. Stella's knowledge of the facility proved invaluable as she led them towards a hidden exit. As they rounded a corner, they collided with a familiar figure, Dr. Eliza Chen, her arms full of research equipment. "Morris, what in the world?" she began, before the approaching sounds of pursuit cut her off. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You need to get out of here." "Help us," Jeremy pleaded, his heart pounding. Dr. Chen's gaze sharpened. "I will, but I need something in return. Your pheromone samples. I must have them for my research." With no time to argue, Jeremy nodded. Dr. Chen swiftly extracted a sample and fed it into a nearby machine. Within seconds, she held a small spray bottle filled with a potent, synthesized version of Jeremy's pheromones. The trio pressed on, their breath coming in ragged gas as they neared the exit. But as they approached the final security checkpoint, they found their path blocked by a group of male pack-led guards, their weapons raised. In a desperate move, Dr. Chen uncapped the pheromone spray and released a fine mist into the air. The effect was instantaneous. Female pack-led workers in the vicinity froze, their eyes dilating as they turned towards the human intruders. A wave of intense arousal swept through the room, causing chaos to erupt. Taking advantage of the confusion, Jeremy, Stella, and Dr. Chen slipped past the distracted guards. They burst out into the cool night air, alarms blaring behind them as searchlights swept the area. Without pause, they sprinted towards the human embassy, their lungs burning with each step. The streets blurred around them as they ran, the weight of their actions pressing down upon them with each footfall. As they approached the embassy gates, Jeremy could see frantic activity within. Ambassador Blackwood stood at the entrance, his face a mask of barely held back panic. "Morris, Chen, get inside now," he barked, ushering them through the gates. His eyes widened as he spotted Stella. "What is she doing here?" Before Jeremy could respond, Blackwood cut him off. "Never mind that now. The pack-led government has issued an official protest. They're accusing us of espionage. We've been ordered to leave the planet immediately." Jeremy's stomach dropped. "All of us?" Blackwood's expression darkened. "Not you, Morris. They want you for questioning." As the reality of the situation sank in, Stella stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. "I want to seek asylum on Earth. Please, I can't go back now." Blackwood hesitated for a moment, his eyes calculating. Then he nodded sharply. "Get her on the ship. We'll sort out the details later." As the embassy staff scrambled to evacuate, Jeremy found himself swept up in a whirlwind of activity. Equipment was hastily packed, documents were shredded, and communications were sent in rapid-fire succession. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Chen pulled Jeremy aside. "I managed to secure a sample of their propulsion technology," she whispered, patting her research case. "It's not much, but it's a start." As they boarded the ship, Jeremy's gaze locked with Stella's. The weight of their actions, the betrayal, the uncertain future, it all hung between them, unspoken but palpable. The ship's engines roared to life, drowning out the sounds of protest from outside the embassy walls. As they broke through the planet's atmosphere, Jeremy stared out the viewport, watching the pack-led world shrink beneath them. He knew that this was only the beginning. Earth now possessed crucial pack-led technology and a high-ranking defector, but at what cost? As the ship accelerated into the vastness of space, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling not just towards Earth, but towards an uncertain future that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Galaxy. As the ship accelerated away from the pack-led homeworld, the gravity of the situation began to settle over the passengers and crew. Admiral Hector Ramirez, a weathered veteran of countless space missions, strode onto the bridge with thunder in his eyes. His gaze swept over Jeremy, Stella, and Dr. Chen, who huddled together near the viewport. "You three," he growled, jabbing a finger in their direction. "My quarters, now." The trio followed the Admiral in tense silence, exchanging nervous glances as they were led into his spacious office. Admiral Ramirez paced behind his desk, his face a mask of barely held-back fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed, slamming his palms on the desk. "We're on the brink of an interstellar war because of your little stunt." Jeremy opened his mouth to speak, but the Admiral cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Save it, Morris. You're all confined to separate quarters until we reach Earth. You're to have no contact with each other or the rest of the crew. Is that clear?" As they were escorted to their assigned rooms, Jeremy caught a final glimpse of Stella. Her eyes were wide with fear and uncertainty, and he felt a pang of guilt twist in his chest. Days passed in isolation, with Jeremy left alone with his thoughts and the weight of his actions. He paced his small quarters, replaying the events on the pack-led world over and over in his mind. On the fourth day of their journey, a soft knock at his door broke the monotony. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, a young officer with kind eyes, entered with a tray of food. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice low and sympathetic. Jeremy shrugged, picking at the bland meal. "As well as can be expected, I suppose. How's Stella? And Dr. Chen?" Sarah glanced over her shoulder before leaning in close. "Dr. Chen's been working non-stop on her research. As for Stella, she's been asking about you." Jeremy's heart leapt. "She has?" Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Listen, I shouldn't be doing this, but meet me in the hydroponics bay at OS 200 hours. I'll make sure Stella's there." That night, Jeremy crept through the dimly lit corridors, his pulse racing with anticipation and fear of discovery. As he entered the hydroponics bay, the lush scent of alien flora enveloped him. "Jeremy!" Stella's voice came from behind a towering fern-like plant. He rushed forward, drinking in the sight of her. Without thinking, he pulled her into a tight embrace. The moment their bodies touched, it was as if an electric current passed between them. Stella gasped, her eyes dilating as she pressed closer. "I've missed you," Jeremy breathed, his hands cupping her face. Their lips met in a desperate, passionate kiss. As they lost themselves in the moment, neither noticed the plants around them beginning to stir. Tendrils reached out, leaves unfurled, and blossoms burst open in a frenzy of accelerated growth. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the ship's botanist, frowned at his datapad as he reviewed the overnight sensor logs from the hydroponics bay. The sudden spike in plant activity was unprecedented. He hurried to report his findings to Admiral Ramirez. As the ship approached the outer rim of Earth's solar system, alarms blared through the corridors. Jeremy was jolted awake by the sound of running feet and shouted orders. "Multiple pack-led vessels detected on long-range scanners," a voice announced over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations." The ship lurched as it changed course, engines straining as they pushed to maximum speed. Jeremy clung to his bunk, heart pounding as he imagined the pack-led pursuers closing in. Suddenly, the ship shuddered and the lights flickered. An eerie quiet settled over the vessel as the familiar hum of the engines faded to silence. "Attention all crew," Admiral Ramirez's voice crackled over the intercom. "We've activated the experimental cloaking device. Power is being diverted to maintain our invisibility. Prepare for emergency protocols." The next hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. As life support systems failed in the outer sections of the ship, crew members flooded into the central areas. Jeremy found himself herded into a crowded common room, surrounded by anxious faces and whispered conversations. His eyes widened as he spotted Stella across the room, flanked by Dr. Chen and a group of security officers. Their gazes locked, and Jeremy felt an immediate pull towards her. As he watched, Stella's breathing quickened, her cheeks flushing. "What's happening to her?" a nearby crewman muttered, eyeing Stella with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the murmurs. "It's the pheromones. In this enclosed space, the effects are amplified. We need to separate them now." Before anyone could act, the ship rocked violently. Sparks erupted from a nearby console as the lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow over the scene. "Cloaking device failure," a voice shouted from the corridor. "Packlet ships have locked onto our position." The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Jeremy felt the strange sensation of weightlessness as the artificial gravity failed. He flailed his arms, trying to gain purchase on something solid as bodies and equipment began to float around him. In the chaos, he caught sight of Stella drifting nearby, her eyes wide with fear. Without thinking, Jeremy pushed off from a wall, propelling himself towards her. As their bodies collided, he wrapped his arms around her, protectively. The moment they touched, Stella let out a soft gasp. Jeremy felt a wave of heat wash over him, his senses overwhelmed by her proximity. Around them, other crew members began to react, their expressions shifting from fear to confusion to something else entirely. "What's happening?" Jeremy managed to ask, his voice thick. Dr. Chen floated nearby, her face a mask of concentration as she tapped furiously at a handheld device. "The pheromone interaction, it's spreading through the ventilation system. In zero gravity, the particles are dispersing even faster." Admiral Ramirez's voice boomed through the room, tinged with frustration and barely held back panic. "All hands, brace for emergency atmospheric entry. This is going to be a rough ride." As the ship began its fiery descent towards Earth, Jeremy tightened his hold on Stella. Around them, crew members clung to each other, their usual discipline crumbling under the combined stress of battle, mechanical failure, and the intoxicating pheromone haze. The vessel shook violently, metal groaning under the strain of re-entry. Warning klaxons blared as the temperature in the room began to rise. Through a nearby viewport, Jeremy caught glimpses of Earth's atmosphere igniting around them, turning the sky into an inferno. As they plummeted towards the planet's surface, Jeremy closed his eyes and held Stella close. Whatever happened next, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The consequences of his actions, of their stolen dance on a distant world, were about to reshape the future of human-packlet relations in ways no one could have predicted. The ship's hull screamed as it tore through the upper atmosphere, the fate of its crew and their precious cargo hanging in the balance. As they hurtled towards Earth, Jeremy braced himself for impact, knowing that their landing was just the beginning of a new and dangerous chapter in this interstellar drama. The ship's hull groaned and buckled as it plummeted through the atmosphere, the heat of re-entry turning the exterior into a glowing inferno. Suddenly, a deafening crack reverberated through the vessel. The ship shuddered violently, and Jeremy felt a sickening lurch as the floor seemed to drop away beneath him. Stella's scream was lost in the cacophony of tearing metal and shattering equipment. The ship was breaking apart. In a matter of seconds, the once mighty vessel split into three main sections. Jeremy and Stella, still clinging to each other, found themselves in the central portion as it spiraled away from the other fragments. "Brace for impact!" Jeremy shouted, pulling Stella close and wrapping his body around hers protectively. Their section of the ship plummeted through the clouds, the ground rushing up to meet them at terrifying speed. Trees materialized beneath them, a sea of green that seemed both welcoming and deadly. With a thunderous crash, they hit the canopy. Branches snapped and splintered, slowing their descent but battering the hull. The makeshift cocoon of twisted metal finally came to rest on the forest floor, smoke billowing from the wreckage. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a groan of protesting metal, a hatch burst open. Jeremy stumbled out, coughing and disoriented. He turned back immediately, reaching in to help Stella. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse from the smoke. Stella nodded weakly, her eyes wide with shock. "I think so. Where are we?" Jeremy scanned their surroundings. Dense forests stretched in every direction, the trees towering above them like silent sentinels. The air was thick with the scent of pine and disturbed earth. "Some kind of forest," he replied. "We need to get away from the wreckage. Can you walk?" Stella tested her legs, wincing slightly, but nodding. "Yes, I can manage." Jeremy took her hand, ignoring the jolt of electricity that seemed to pass between them at the contact. "We need to find water and shelter. Stay close." They made their way through the underbrush, the sounds of the forest gradually replacing the ringing in their ears. Jeremy's survival training kicked in, his eyes constantly scanning for signs of water or anything they could use. As they walked, Jeremy couldn't help but notice how Stella seemed to gravitate towards him. Every time they had to squeeze past a fallen log or navigate a steep incline, she pressed close, her breath quickening. After what felt like hours of trekking, they stumbled upon a small clearing. In the center stood a weathered wooden structure, an old ranger station, long abandoned but still standing. "Thank goodness," Stella breathed, relief evident in her voice. They approached cautiously, Jeremy testing the rickety steps before allowing Stella to follow. Inside, a thick layer of dust covered everything, but the roof seemed intact and the windows unbroken. "We'll stay here for now," Jeremy decided. "At least until we can figure out where we are and if anyone's looking for us." As night fell, the forest came alive with unfamiliar sounds. Stella huddled close to Jeremy on the old couch they'd cleared of dust, her body trembling slightly. "I'm scared, Jeremy," she whispered. "What's going to happen to us?" Jeremy turned to reassure her, but the words died in his throat as their eyes met. The closeness, the stress of their situation, and the ever-present pheromone effect combined into an irresistible force. Without conscious thought, Jeremy leaned in, his lips meeting Stella's in a desperate, passionate kiss. She responded immediately, her arms wrapping around him as they lost themselves in the moment. Outside, unnoticed by the couple, the forest stirred. Leaves unfurled at an accelerated pace, vines crept along the ground with unnatural speed, and flowers bloomed in the moonlight, their petals opening wide to reveal otherworldly colors. Miles away, in the mountain range where the bridge section had crashed, Admiral Ramirez barked orders into a secure comlink. "This is Admiral Ramirez. We have a Code Black situation. I repeat, Code Black. The package has been compromised and we have potential hostile forces incoming. We need immediate extraction and containment protocols enacted." He paused, listening to the response from Earth's military command. His face hardened. "Understood. We'll hold position and secure the perimeter. Ramirez out." Turning to his battered but determined crew, Ramirez's voice carried the weight of their situation. "Listen up, people. We've got pack-led ships entering Earth's atmosphere. They're tracking their tech, which means they'll be headed straight for us in the other crash sites. We need to dig in and prepare for a fight." As his crew scrambled to set up defensive positions, Ramirez's thoughts turned to the other survivors. He could only hope they were alive, and that Earth's forces would reach them before the Pakleds did. In the depths of a sprawling lake, Dr. Chen surfaced beside the floating wreckage of her section, gasping for air. With trembling hands, she grasped the emergency raft that had deployed during the crash. As she climbed aboard, she clutched her waterproof case containing the precious research data and Pakled technology samples. Scanning the shoreline, Chen spotted a beach several hundred meters away. She began paddling, her arms burning with the effort. As she neared the shore, something in the water caught her eye. A school of fish swam past, but their appearance made her gasp in shock. Their scales seemed to shimmer with an unnatural iridescence, and their fins were elongated and more intricate than any species she recognized. Chen's scientific mind raced. Could this be an effect of the Pakled technology interacting with Earth's biosphere? She needed to document this immediately. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, the sound of distant engines filled the air. Jeremy and Stella stirred from their makeshift bed in the ranger station, exchanging worried glances. "Aircraft," Jeremy said, moving to the window. "But I can't tell if they're ours or—" He trailed off as a dark shape passed overhead, unlike any Earth aircraft he'd ever seen. Stella joined him at the window, her hand finding his instinctively. "Pakleds," she whispered, her voice tinged with fear. Jeremy's mind raced. Should they try to signal the incoming forces, hoping they were friendly, or remain hidden, unsure of who might find them first? As the sound of engines grew louder, they knew their time to decide was running out. The fate of their mission, their lives, and potentially the entire planet hung in the balance, and somewhere in the forest around them, the altered flora continued to spread, a silent harbinger of changes yet to come. The sound of engines grew louder, forcing Jeremy and Stella to make a split-second decision. They exchanged a glance, nodding in silent agreement. "We can't stay hidden," Jeremy said, moving towards the door. "It's too risky. We need to make ourselves visible." They emerged from the ranger station into the cool morning air. The forest around them seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, leaves and vines moving in ways that defied natural laws. Jeremy tried to push aside his unease, focusing on their immediate survival. "Over here!" he shouted, waving his arms frantically as a familiar shape appeared in the sky. An Earth military helicopter swooped low over the treetops, its searchlight cutting through the early morning mist. Jeremy felt a wave of relief wash over him as the aircraft began its descent into a small clearing nearby. As they approached the helicopter, Stella stumbled, her legs weak from exhaustion and the lingering effects of the crash. Jeremy caught her, steadying her with an arm around her waist. The moment their bodies touched, he felt that familiar surge of heat, and Stella's breath hitched audibly. The helicopter crew, fully suited in protective gear, quickly ushered them aboard. As they lifted off, Jeremy caught a glimpse of the ranger station through the window. Vines had already begun to engulf the structure, their growth visible even from this distance. The flight to the military base was a blur of adrenaline and fatigue. Jeremy found himself drifting in and out of consciousness, only fully awakening as they touched down on a bustling tarmac. General Maria Rodriguez, a stern-faced woman with steel-gray hair, greeted them as they disembarked. "Welcome back," she said, her voice crisp and authoritative. "We have a lot to discuss." Inside the command center, Jeremy was surprised to find Admiral Ramirez and Dr. Chen already present. The Admiral looked worse for wear, his uniform torn and dirty, while Dr. Chen clutched a waterproof case to her chest, her eyes wide with awe-inspiring excitement. As Jeremy recounted the events leading to their crash, he became acutely aware of Stella's proximity. She sat beside him, her body tense and her cheeks flushed. The small conference room seemed to grow warmer, and Jeremy noticed several of the military personnel shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Chen seized a momentary lull in the debriefing to interject. "General Rodriguez, I have critical information regarding the crash sites," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. She opened her case, revealing an array of plant and water samples. "The combination of pack-led technology, human pheromones, and Earth's ecosystem is causing unprecedented mutations," Chen explained, holding up a leaf that seemed to shimmer and change color as she moved it. "Look at this specimen from the forest where Jeremy and Stella sheltered. It's grown to 10 times its normal size in a matter of hours." General Rodriguez leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "And the implications of this are—" Before Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. A young lieutenant burst into the room, his face pale. "General, long-range sensors have detected multiple pack-led ships entering Earth's atmosphere." Rodriguez was on her feet in an instant. "Activate all planetary defense systems and mobilize the space fleet," she ordered. "We need to prepare for a potential ground assault." The base erupted into a flurry of activity. As soldiers rushed to their positions, Jeremy found himself pulled aside by Stella. "Jeremy," she whispered, her voice strained. "I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't control it." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the physical toll their ordeal had taken. Her skin glistened with a fine sheen of sweat. Her pupils were dilated, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. Before he could respond, a potted plant on a nearby desk suddenly sprouted new leaves, its stem elongating visibly. Dr. Chen, who had been passing by, stopped in her tracks, her scientific curiosity overriding the chaos around them. "Fascinating," she murmured, whipping out a small device to record the plant's accelerated growth. "The proximity effect is even stronger than I anticipated." A distant explosion rocked the base, cutting short any further observations. General Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, prepare for imminent pack-led ground assault. This is not a drill." Jeremy looked at Stella, then at Dr. Chen, his mind racing. They were trapped in the research facility, surrounded by sensitive equipment and mutated plant specimens. The sound of approaching pack-led forces grew louder, and Jeremy knew they had only moments to act. In that instant, a crazy idea formed in his mind. He remembered how his dance had affected the pack leads on that distant world, how it had amplified Stella's pheromones. It was a long shot, but it might be their only chance. "Stella," he said, taking her hands in his, "I know this sounds insane, but I need you to trust me. We're going to dance." As the first Pakled soldiers breached the facility's outer defenses, Jeremy began to move, his body falling into the familiar rhythms that had started this whole adventure. Stella, after a moment's hesitation, joined him, their movements synchronized and fluid. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Dramatic. As Jeremy and Stella moved in perfect synchronization, their bodies radiating an intense energy, the atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she observed the phenomenon unfolding before her. The potted plant on the desk continued its accelerated growth, its leaves unfurling and stretching towards the dancing couple. She fumbled with her recording device, capturing every detail of this unprecedented event. General Rodriguez burst into the room, her face a mask of persistence. "We need everyone at battle stations now. The Pakleds have breached our outer defenses and—" She stopped mid-sentence, taken aback by the scene before her. Jeremy and Stella's dance had reached a fever pitch, their movements fluid and mesmerizing. The air around them seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. Suddenly, the approaching Pakled forces stumbled, their movements becoming erratic and uncoordinated. "What in the world?" Rodriguez muttered, her tactical mind already racing with possibilities. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "General, I believe we're witnessing a weaponized form of the pheromone effect. Jeremy and Stella's dance is amplifying it to levels we've never seen before." As if to emphasize her point, a group of Pakled soldiers burst through the door, only to freeze in their tracks, swaying unsteadily as they were engulfed by the pheromone cloud. Rodriguez's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. "Lieutenant," she barked into her comm device, "gather all personnel with dance training. We're forming a new unit, effective immediately." In the weeks that followed, Earth's military underwent a radical transformation. The newly formed Operation Rhythm became the spearhead of humanity's defense against the Pakled invasion. Jeremy and Stella, as the pioneers of this unconventional combat method, found themselves at the center of an intensive training program. The remote desert facility buzzed with activity as more human Pakled pairs joined the ranks. The arid landscape provided an ideal setting for their training, minimizing the ecological impact of their pheromone-induced plant growth. During one particularly grueling session, Jeremy and Stella pushed themselves to new limits. As they moved in perfect harmony, their bodies glistening with sweat under the scorching sun, something extraordinary happened. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Dr. Chen, who had been monitoring the session, gasped in astonishment. From the parched earth, green shoots erupted, growing at an impossible rate. "Incredible," she breathed, rushing to collect samples. The combination of their heightened emotional state, physical exertion, and this unique environment has triggered something entirely new. Within hours, a lush oasis had sprung up around the training area. The new plant species, quickly dubbed Harmonia by Dr. Chen, displayed remarkable properties. Its roots seemed to purify the soil, while its leaves released a substance that cleansed the air. News of this discovery spread like wildfire, reaching the highest echelons of Earth's government. President Eleanor Hayes herself visited the facility, marveling at the Harmonia plants. "This could be the solution to our long-standing environmental issues," she declared, ordering an immediate scale-up of cultivation efforts. As Earth grappled with these new developments, the Pakled High Command grew increasingly frustrated. Their ground assault had failed spectacularly thanks to Operation Rhythm. In a desperate move, they launched a series of orbital strikes on key Earth defense installations. The attacks caused significant damage and civilian casualties, forcing Earth's leaders to consider deploying their newly developed hybrid technology as a defensive measure. General Rodriguez, her face grim, addressed the Operation Rhythm teams. "The Pakleds have escalated this conflict. We're deploying you to strategic locations around the globe. Your mission is to repel any further ground incursions." Jeremy and Stella exchanged a determined look as Rodriguez continued. "As our most experienced pair, you'll be leading a team to defend the North American Command Center. The fate of our planet may well rest on your shoulders." As they prepared for deployment, Dr. Chen approached them, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "I've made a breakthrough in my research," she said, lowering her voice. "Prolonged exposure to the human paclid pheromone combination is causing subtle changes in human physiology. It's enhancing our resilience to environmental stressors and improving overall health." Jeremy furrowed his brow. "That sounds like good news. Why do you look worried?" Chen sighed. "The long-term implications are unknown. We're stepping into uncharted territory here." Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "All units, prepare for immediate deployment. The Pacleds have launched a massive assault on Earth's major cities." As chaos erupted across the globe, Jeremy and Stella found themselves leading their team in defense of the North American Command Center. The Pacled ground troops swarmed towards them, their weapons primed for destruction. Jeremy took Stella's hand, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. As one, they began to move, their bodies flowing into the intricate patterns they had perfected over weeks of intensive training. The effect was instantaneous. The approaching pack-led soldiers faltered, their movements becoming uncoordinated and confused. Jeremy and Stella's team fanned out around them, their own dances adding to the pheromone cloud that now enveloped the battlefield. As the combat intensified, Jeremy and Stella's movements became increasingly synchronized, their connection deepening with each passing moment. The air around them seemed to pulse with energy, affecting not only the pack-led soldiers, but the environment itself. Nearby Harmonia plants, which had been cultivated around the command center as part of Earth's new defense strategy, began to grow at an accelerated rate. Their tendrils reached out, forming a dense protective barrier around the facility. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air. Jeremy looked up to see a massive pack-led ship descending from the clouds, a pulsating orb of energy at its center. "They're deploying their superweapon!" Rodriguez's voice crackled over the comm. "If that thing hits, it'll obliterate the entire region." Jeremy turned to Stella, his heart pounding. "We have to try," he said, his voice barely audible above the chaos. She nodded, her eyes filled with perseverance. As the pack-led weapon powered up, Jeremy and Stella launched into their most intense routine yet. Their bodies moved as one, generating a massive pheromone cloud that seemed to ripple through the air. The Harmonia plants responded instantly, growing at an impossible rate. As the pack-led weapon fired, the plants released a powerful neutralizing agent into the atmosphere. The energy beam struck the cloud of pheromones and plant particles, dissipating harmlessly in a brilliant display of light. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Then a cheer went up from the Earth forces as the pack-led ships began to retreat, their ultimate weapon rendered useless. As reports of similar victories poured in from around the globe, Jeremy and Stella finally allowed themselves to relax. They had done it. Earth had prevailed. But as they watched the sun rise over the transformed landscape, Jeremy couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The world had changed irrevocably, and humanity along with it. What new challenges and opportunities would this brave new world bring? Only time would tell. As Earth emerged from the shadow of the pack-led invasion, a new dawn broke over a transformed world. In the months following the decisive battle, Jeremy and Stella found themselves at the epicenter of a rapidly changing society. The dance that had saved humanity became a symbol of unity, practiced in parks and plazas across the globe. Harmonia plants, once confined to military installations, now adorned city streets and rural landscapes alike, their vibrant green leaves a testament to the planet's renewal. But beneath the surface of this newfound peace, an even more profound transformation was taking place. During a routine medical examination at the desert facility, Dr. Chen's eyes widened as she studied the results on her tablet. "Jeremy, Stella," she said, her voice a mix of awe and trepidation. "I need you to see this." The couple leaned in, their hands instinctively intertwining. On the screen, a complex DNA strand pulsed and shifted, its structure unlike anything they had ever seen. "Is that ours?" Stella asked, her brow furrowed. Dr. Chen nodded. "Yes, but it's not just yours individually. Somehow your DNA has begun to merge, creating a unique human pack-led hybrid genome." Jeremy felt a surge of emotions, fear, excitement, curiosity. What does this mean for us? Before Dr. Chen could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. General Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. All personnel, report to the main auditorium immediately. We have a Code Omega situation. As they hurried through the corridors, Jeremy and Stella noticed other human packled pairs exhibiting similar signs of physiological change. Some moved with an otherworldly grace, while others seemed to communicate without words. In the packed auditorium, President Hayes stood at the podium, her face grave. "My fellow citizens," she began, "we have received reports from across the globe of a phenomenon we're calling harmonic evolution. Humans and packlades in close contact are experiencing rapid genetic changes, forming a new, compatible species." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jeremy felt Stella's hand tighten around his. "In light of these developments," Hayes continued, "we have convened an emergency summit with packled leaders. As the first and most advanced hybrids, Jeremy and Stella will attend as honored guests and scientific subjects." The journey to the summit was a blur of preparations and briefings. As their transport approached the grand conference hall, Jeremy marveled at the mix of human and packled architecture, a visual representation of their newly forged alliance. Stepping into the hall, Jeremy and Stella felt a wave of energy wash over them. The assembled delegates, human and packled alike, turned as one, their bodies responding to the couple's presence. Pheromones filled the air, creating an atmosphere charged with potential. As the summit began, Jeremy noticed a group of attendees shifting uneasily, their eyes darting suspiciously between the speakers. Before he could point them out to Stella, they sprang into action. "Death to the impure," a human extremist shouted, brandishing a weapon. His packled counterpart echoed the sentiment in his own language, raising a device that pulsed with ominous energy. Chaos erupted. Delegates scattered, seeking cover behind overturned tables and chairs. Security forces rushed in, but the extremists had the advantage of surprise. In that moment of crisis, Jeremy looked at Stella. No words were needed. They moved as one, their bodies flowing into the familiar rhythms of their dance. The effect was instantaneous and profound. A wave of hybrid pheromones swept through the hall, enveloping everyone in its path. The extremists faltered, their weapons lowering as they struggled to process the rush of unfamiliar sensations. Around Jeremy and Stella, other pairs began to dance, human with packled, their movements awkward at first but growing more synchronized with each passing moment. The conference hall transformed into an impromptu ballroom, filled with twirling couples and the sound of laughter. As they danced, Jeremy noticed the harmonia plants decorating the hall, responding to the pheromones. They grew at an accelerated rate, their vines intertwining around the dancers. Soft bioluminescence emanated from the plants, bathing the room in an ethereal glow. The combined effect of the dance, the pheromones, and the glowing plants created a harmonious atmosphere that dissolved tensions and fostered understanding between the two species. Jeremy felt a warmth spreading through his body, a sense of connection not just to Stella, but to everyone in the room. Suddenly, he realized that the warmth had become a visible glow. He looked down to see his skin emitting a soft, pulsating light. Stella's body shimmered with the same radiance. As they continued to move together, Jeremy felt a strange sensation, as if his very atoms were rearranging themselves. He looked into Stella's eyes and saw his own amazement reflected there. Their forms began to blur, individual features blending into a single, radiant being. The assembled crowd watched in awe as the first true human packled hybrid emerged, a perfect balance of both species' strengths. Jeremy and Stella moved with fluid grace, their merged form radiating an aura of peace and unity. The extremists, witnessing this transformation, dropped their weapons. One by one, they joined the dance, their faces a mix of wonder and remorse. As the music faded and the glow subsided, Jeremy and Stella found themselves standing hand in hand once more, their individual forms restored. But something had changed. They could feel the potential for merger humming just beneath their skin, a new power waiting to be explored. President Hayes approached them, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "What we've witnessed here today," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "is nothing short of miraculous. This is the dawn of a new era for both our species. As the summit concluded with the signing of a historic accord recognizing the new hybrid species, Jeremy and Stella knew that their journey was a long way to go. They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as individuals, as a couple, and as the progenitors of a new galactic civilization. The future stretched before them, vast and full of possibilities, and somewhere in the distance the stars beckoned, promising new adventures and discoveries beyond imagination.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.